Hi, I'm Mr. Edgard, and today I will tell you three scary stories about the eerie secrets of houses. If this is your first time on my channel, I recommend subscribing. So, sit back, relax, and let's begin. My grandfather died mysteriously. His journal revealed something worse. I was halfway through the long drive when I got the call. My grandfather had died. It didn't make sense. He was strong, still tending to his farmland every day. No illnesses, no accidents, just gone. The official report said he passed in his sleep, but something about it felt wrong. I hadn't seen him in a while, and now I'd never get the chance. The funeral was small. A few neighbors, some distant relatives I barely knew. People muttered about what a good man he was, how he worked the land right up until the end. Someone said it was peaceful, but I could see the unease in their faces. Like they didn't quite believe it either. Afterward, I stayed behind. I needed more time. More than that, I needed answers. The drive to his farm felt longer than I remembered. The sun was already dipping below the horizon when I arrived. His house sat at the edge of the vast farmland, surrounded by skeletal trees that swayed slightly in the evening breeze. The cattle were still there, moving sluggishly in the dim light. Something about the air felt thick, heavy in my lungs. The house was unlocked, just like always. Inside, the scent of old wood and pipe tobacco lingered. Everything was exactly as he left it. His boots by the door, a half-empty coffee cup on the table. It felt like he had just stepped out for a moment. And yet, the silence was suffocating. I wandered through the rooms, my fingers tracing over the worn furniture. In his study, I found a thick leather-bound journal sitting on his desk. I remembered seeing him write in it before, always meticulous about his records. I flipped through the pages, expecting farm notes, weather patterns. At first, that's what I found. But as I kept reading, the entries began to change. March 4th. Saw it again today. The black shadow. Middle of the afternoon, standing near the cattle pen. I looked away for a second, and it was gone. Thought it was my eyes playing tricks, but the dogs won't stop barking. March 12th. More symbols on the trees. Deep scratches, almost like letters but wrong. Not carved, not burned. Like the bark itself split open to make them. March 21st. One of the cows was found dead. Head clean off. Blood everywhere. No tracks, no signs of struggle. Called the sheriff. He said it was probably a wild animal. But no animal does that. April 5th. It's getting closer. I hear it at night. The cattle are restless. Something is out there. The handwriting became shaky, uneven, like he had written in a hurry. April 14th. Steve visited today, but something was wrong. He didn't act like himself. He just stood there, watching me. He barely spoke. And when he left, the dogs wouldn't stop growling. My blood ran cold. I hadn't seen my grandfather in months. I reread the entry, gripping the journal so tight my fingers ached. He had seen something that looked like me. The air in the house felt heavier now, pressing down on me like a thick, invisible weight. The floor creaked behind me. A slow, deliberate sound. I wasn't alone. I turned toward the hallway. Darkness stretched beyond the doorway, swallowing the end of the hall in shadow. A whisper of movement just out of sight. A shape, tall, thin, just standing there. My breath caught in my throat. My mind screamed at me to run, but my body refused to move. The figure shifted, almost imperceptibly, its outline warping slightly, like heat rising off pavement. Then it took a step forward. The floor groaned under its weight. I bolted. I don't remember making it to the front door, just the blind panic surging through my veins. I flung it open and stumbled onto the porch, gasping in the cool night air. The cattle were going insane, kicking, bellowing, their eyes rolling with terror. Something was wrong with them. They moved in frantic, jerky motions, foaming at the mouth. One collapsed onto its side, convulsing. Its skin rippled, bulging unnaturally, as if something was moving underneath. I turned away, while rising in my throat. A low, wet sound filled the air, like tearing fabric, but thicker. I forced myself to look. The cow's body split open. Its ribs cracked outward with a sickening pop. something dark and glistening slithering free from the ruin of its body. A shape, shifting and writhing, pulling itself upright on two long limbs. The air reeked of rot. It turned its head toward me. No eyes, no features, just a gaping, hollow void where its face should have been. And then it smiled. A deep, unnatural grin split across its empty face, revealing rows of jagged, uneven teeth. I ran. The field stretched endlessly before me, the dry grass slashing at my legs as I sprinted blindly. The house loomed behind me, shrinking into the distance. I didn't know where I was going, just away. A sound followed me. Not footsteps. Something worse. Wet, clicking noises. A low, rattling breath. I dared to glance back. It was running. Its limbs moved too fast, too erratic, shifting and stretching in ways that didn't make sense. The thing that had been inside that cow was now something else, something bigger. And it was catching up. I pushed myself harder, my lungs burning. My car was in sight now, parked at the edge of the dirt road. Just a little further, a voice whispered in my ear, "Hey kiddo." I screamed. The ground rushed up to meet me as I stumbled, my knees hitting the dirt hard. Pain shot through my legs, but I didn't stop. I scrambled forward, throwing myself into the car, yanking the door shut behind me. The thing slammed into the window. My grandfather's face stared back at me. But it wasn't him. The eyes were too dark, the skin stretched too tight. The mouth moved, but the words that came out were wrong. Too many voices speaking at once. "You don't recognize me?" My hands fumbled with the keys. The engine roared to life. It grinned wider. I slammed my foot on the gas. The car shot forward, the tires kicking up a cloud of dust and gravel. I didn't look back. I didn't slow down. Not until I saw the lights of the city in the distance. The night behind me swallowing that horrible place whole. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw it. My grandfather's too wide grin, his hollow eyes staring right through me. But I told myself it was over, that I was safe now. The next morning, my mother called. She sounded off. Her voice was flat, emotionless, like she was forcing the words. "Hey, sweetheart," she said. "You coming over for dinner tonight?" Something in my stomach twisted. She never called me sweetheart. I hesitated, gripping my phone so tight my fingers ached. "Mom, are you okay?" Silence. Then, too slowly, too smoothly, "Of course, kiddo." My mouth went dry. She never called me that either. I hung up without answering. Outside, the wind was still. The morning air felt thick, heavy. Something was watching me, and it had followed me home. I found a hidden door in my basement, and what I discovered shocked me. I've been living in an old house for a little over a year now. It was built in the 1920s, located in a quiet neighborhood where the houses all seemed to have their own stories. The previous owner was an elderly man who passed away before I moved in, and his family sold the house quickly. There wasn't much known about the house's history, but people often mentioned how strange the basement felt. I didn't think much of it at first. It's just an old house, right? But ever since I moved in, I felt like there's something not quite right about the place, especially the basement. It's not just the usual feeling of an old, musty basement. It's hard to describe, but there's a constant chill, even in the summer. The walls look strange, too, uneven like they've been patched up. Over time, I started to notice that there were areas in the basement that didn't make sense, like small gaps in the walls, a crack here or there that fell off. It got me curious, but I never thought too much about it until last month. I was cleaning out the basement one afternoon, going through some boxes that had been left behind by the previous owner. As I was shifting an old shelf, something strange happened. I knocked on the wall behind it, and it sounded hollow. I assumed it was just some old wood or a section of drywall, but my curiosity got the best of me. I tapped around the wall, and that's when I found it, a loose panel. At first, I thought it was just an old piece of wood that had come unhinged, but when I pulled it away, I saw that it was part of a hidden door. There was no handle, just a small keyhole that looked old, rusted, and almost like it had been deliberately hidden. I didn't know what to make of it, but my instincts told me I should investigate further. I spent the next couple of days searching the house for a key, but I had no luck. It wasn't until I was going through an old drawer in the kitchen that I found something strange. A rusted key, wrapped in a piece of old paper. I don't know why I even bothered to try it, but the key fit perfectly into the door. I could feel the door give as I turned the key, the old hinges creaking in protest. When I opened the door, I was met with the most putrid, musty air I've ever smelled. It was as though the room hadn't been touched in decades. I stepped inside with a flashlight, and that's when I saw it, a small room, not much bigger than a closet. The walls were covered in strange, almost indecipherable symbols, like something out of an ancient text. There was a wooden chair in the center of the room, facing the wall, and sitting next to it was an old notebook. At first, I thought it was just junk, but then I picked up the notebook. It was old, really old, but the handwriting inside was still legible. Most of it was a list of names and dates, but some of the entries were strange, cryptic. The last entry was dated just 3 years ago. I don't know why that stuck with me, but it did. But the thing that truly made my blood run cold was the Polaroid photo stuck to the wall next to the chair. It was a picture of the chair, but it wasn't empty. There was a person sitting in it, looking straight at the camera. I stared at it for a long time before I realized something terrifying. The person in the photo looked like me. I've never sat in that chair. I've never been in that room. And yet, there I was sitting in that chair in a photo from God knows when. I panicked and slammed the door shut, locking it back up. Since then, I haven't gone near it. But I keep thinking about it. What if I've been here before? What if something's been manipulating time or memory in this house? I haven't told anyone about it yet, but the feeling that something's wrong here has only grown stronger. Things in the house have started to feel off. Objects are misplaced, and I've heard footsteps in the middle of the night when no one is there. And every time I pass the basement door, I feel like it's watching me. I don't know what to do. Should I go back into that room and try to figure out what's going on? Or should I leave it locked away and pretend I never found it? The boy in the dryer. When I was a little boy, we lived in a small town with a very rural community. My brothers and I were latchkey kids for the most part. After school, we would explore the area and play games like hide and seek or tag. One afternoon, after Mom got home, she asked me to go find my brother to help clean while she made dinner. I was playing with him before she got home, so he shouldn't have been far. I went outside, searching for any sign of him, but couldn't find him. I called his name and got no response. I wondered if he was hiding from me. I searched outside in all our normal places we hid, and he wasn't there. Weird. Maybe he was hiding in the house. I checked our room, still nothing. Slightly annoyed, I wondered if he was hiding in the house. I got an urge to check the dryer. At the time it felt normal, even though we've never hid there and I've never done it before. But thinking back on this day, it was way too specific and out of the ordinary to be a coincidence. I crept down the creaky basement stairs trying to be as quiet as possible. In the dark of the basement, only slightly illuminated by the light bending down the stairs, an idea formed. If he was going to play this stupid game, right now, I'm going to scare the crap out of him. I stood waiting for a noise, and sure enough, there was a shuffle in the dryer. Very slight, but I heard it and knew he was hiding in there. I walked on the cool concrete, slowly inching towards the dryer. As I approached the door and placed my hand on the handle, I made sure my lungs were full to be as loud and fast as possible. I tore the door open with a roar, feeling like a rabid bear cornering its prey. My brother was there, but he didn't react at all. I waited for some sort of response, but got none. I asked if he was okay and placed my hand on him. As I did, his skin felt inexplicably hot and rough like the char on a steak. His head flipped to look at me, but not like a human motion of turning your head. One moment his head was between his legs, the next he was looking into my soul, tears streaming down his ash and soot-covered face. This was not my brother. It looked nothing like him from what I could see in the dark. Also, my brother has hair. My guts dropped to the floor as I backed away, terrified. Tripping over myself, I fell hard on my back. When I looked up still on the floor, he was gone. I flipped over and sprinted up the stairs, sitting on the couch, not saying a word. Eventually, I worked up the courage to vocalize what I had experienced. As I did, tears welled up in my eyes. I couldn't talk about it without reliving the fear. My mom seemed confused. I wouldn't believe it if I hadn't seen it either, But normally when kids lie, I don't think they express as much fear as I did that night. She hugged me and said I was going to be okay, that I'm safe now. After a few minutes, my brother came in the front door. I was already sitting at the table, just looking down. I wiped my eyes to make sure he didn't notice I was crying, even though I had stopped already. I didn't need him to know and laugh at me. My mom and I kind of moved on, and I never brought it up to anyone. I grew up and moved out. My mom and dad grew old and passed. Last year, I took the responsibility of selling the house. Making conversation with the realtor, we started talking about the property's history. She said the original house burnt down and a kid was trapped inside. They built a new home and sold it to the family who sold it to my parents. Terrified this couldn't be some elaborate prank, I had never told anyone except my mom about what I saw down in the basement. I didn't know what to think. I still don't really. I just hope what or wherever that boy is, he can find rest one day.